Israel appears to have targeted a hospital. Just what has happened and what is the response both within Israel and in the international community? Plus, is the United States actually intervening and checking Iranian power? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. This is your Israel-Hamas conflict daily update for October 17th and 18th, 2023. Let's get right into it. Now, as you guys know, the caveat, as always, guys, I am not here to tell you who's right and who's wrong. I'm an analyst analyzing a conflict, right? So that when you read stuff on the news or you have a angry debate on the internet, you have better information and more up-to-date information. So don't at me with what side you thought was right or wrong. Again, I am here to report the facts to you guys. So taking a look at the map, what is interesting is first we have a report that the Israeli army has targeted a hospital. This is the Ahi Arab Hospital in Gaza City. Reportedly, you have several hundred casualties. In addition to the health system in Gaza that is already under strain due to the scarce fuel and power outages. If you've spent more than 2 seconds in a hospital, you know it needs electricity to operate. And the Gazan authorities have said that the Al-Baptisti Hospital that they don't have the infrastructure to support this. And you can see on the maps here, guys, the density of Gaza. And this is essential to understand, I think, the entirety of the situation. When we look at other conflicts in Europe, in the African region, you rarely see this level of density. And so you can see how if you were to attack with modern military munitions, there's almost no way to have the level of distinction that you need. Now, let's talk about what the response to this hospital targeting is. First off, the Israeli military is reporting or has said that they really are that they don't. First, they were like, we have no information about a hospital bombing in Gaza, right? Then later on, they said that, oh, actually, we're going to be investigating it. So it's possible it was a mistake. It's possible that it is something that they did deliberately. Again, the issue with Hamas is that, remember, Israel's stated objective is the destruction of Hamas, not just as a military entity, the Al-Qassam brigades, but politically as well. And so because Hamas operates so much of the governance and social infrastructure within Gaza, you end up in a situation where almost every public service, therefore, becomes a military target. There is a rationale that Israel could use to justify this to themselves, or why it is a legitimate military target. But it's also possible, again, just given the extreme density of this area. Again, look at the map scale here, 200 meters. So within you're talking about a dozen. It looks like over a dozen homes within 200 meters of each other. Very precise, very dense. So easy to make a mistake, even if you're working off a really, really good map. And God help you if you have inaccurate maps or not up-to-date information. So let's talk about the response from across the community. First off, Hamas reportedly saying that if Israel stops bombing Gaza, they'll release all their hostages, which is itself well, this is reported by NBC News. This doesn't seem like something Hamas would do because it sends the message to Israel that targeting civilians and civilian infrastructure and the blockade were all effective hostage negotiation tactics. And it's likely Hamas leadership doesn't want to actually validate that belief. But it appears that there was a large number of protests against the bombing of the hospital. Many of which turned into violence, or there was a shooting at an army camp in a place called Abu Dis, east of Jerusalem. You can see with a protest against the bombing of the hospital. You also have the Palestinian Authority injuring someone who was protesting the hospital at yet another protest. This in the West, it looks like in the West Bank. You also have, of course, Jordan coming out and condemning the hospital, and of course holding Israel responsible, which is. I mean, I guess it's not objectively true. But if you are, according to the law of war, the responsible party in these sort of air attacks is the person doing the air attack, right? There is a law of war requirement that attacks attempt to meaningfully distinguish between military and protected objects. Now, to be clear, this doesn't mean that you have to be right 100% of the time. The fog of war is real. It's really hard. I have done it. I was in Afghanistan. I worked tirelessly, absolutely tremendous efforts put in to avoid targeting civilian infrastructure. Oftentimes, as said, I have been to hospitals where the staff told me, we treat Taliban here. And I said, and I could have petitioned to have the hospital defunded, demolished, destroyed. In theory, I could have destroyed it right there. I think I would probably get fired if I did that, because we all recognize in that conflict that targeting civilian infrastructure backfires so frequently. But the standard's not perfection. Okay. So the question is, what did Israel do a good enough job determining what they were hitting? Was it going to distinguish meaningfully between combatants and civilians? And again, the standard's not never make a mistake. The standard is do your absolute best to target military objects, combatants, and objects of military value, and avoid damaging civilians and civilian infrastructure. So just again, you're going to hear a lot of talk on the internet. You're going to hear, I already hear a lot of talk thrown around the word war crime. Just understand that just because something bad happened doesn't make it a war crime. But it's also true that if it quacks like a duck, looks like a duck, swims like a duck, and flies like a duck, it's probably a duck. So if you see, hospitals repeatedly getting hit in strikes where the military capabilities of that country, right? Israel's a first world military with modern equipment. It's, Russia with their Soviet era artillery, you expect them to be kind of, ballpark accurate. The Israeli military has a lot of tools at its disposal, so the standard should be higher. Again, this isn't again to say it was or wasn't something. This is just how you should think about this process. So Hamas, of course, responding. Let's see if we can find this here. The Al-Qassam brigades, right? They threw some missiles at Israeli military sites, but then, of course, they committed a war crime themselves, proudly touting that we bombed Tel Aviv in response to the massacres against civilians in Gaza. This is different because they don't even pretend. They are like, yeah, the point was to target civilian objects, right? There was no military target within Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv was the thing they targeted, a civilian city. So you've got, again, but bear in mind, right? Again, the Qassam Brigade's different standard. They have homemade rockets. They are not that accurate, but it's about what you try to target. And if you sit there and go, we could have targeted a military base, and they did. Earlier on, they did target Israeli military bases, right? We bombed Tel Aviv. Let's see if I can find their statement where they said how they attacked military bases. You can see more civilian infrastructure targeting. I'm probably going to get demonetized just for showing these pictures. Don't want to show them. But the Hezbollah also said, here we go. The Qassam Brigades also said, we bombed an Israeli airbase with a missile barrage in response to targeting civilians. Do you see the distinction? They're both equally accurate, but look at the map, and you can see. Look at how much easier it is for Hamas to use homemade rockets to target this airbase and not get it wrong, right? If they miss, they land in the empty desert. Whereas if you target, in Gaza, if you miss even a little bit, you miss bad. I mean, look at how you're never more than a few feet from a religious site, a grocery store. Look, even the hospital is 200 meters from another hospital. So again, this isn't who's right, who's wrong. This is how you assess this environment. There's, of course, lots and lots of protesters. There's also been an armed clash between Palestinian fighters and an army checkpoint north of Jerusalem. So it's clear that Hamas seems to be operating with a tactical mentality of a little of A, a little of B, right? A little bit of war crimes where they are indiscriminately targeting civilian and military, and they are also deliberately and carefully targeting military sites, right? Legitimate military targets like checkpoints, air bases. You could see, right? There's also confrontations erupted with Israeli forces. Yeah, this again, a lot of protests within Jerusalem. This is the takeaway, guys, from all of this, is that these sort of back and forths just become more and more brutal over time. Now let's talk a little bit about the Qataris. Yeah, the Qataris recently put out a statement. Let's see if we can find it here. Supposedly, according to the Qataris, the Biden administration has warned the Iranian representative at the UN that if Iran intervenes directly in the conflict, the United States will have to act militarily. All right. So this is backed up, of course, by the fact that the U.S. has 2 carrier strike groups in the Middle East. Again, the message is not for Israel and it's not for Hamas. The carrier strike groups are in this region to send a clear message to Iran that they cannot intervene directly in this conflict. Now, the odds of that happening are pretty small, right? As you can see, Iran is not even adjacent to Israel. It's separated by Iraq. Now, Iran has, of course, military tentacles, right, reaching far and wide. They are tremendously influential within the government of Iraq, tremendously influential within Lebanon through through Hezbollah, and by extension through Hamas. The problem is when you make these kind of statements, the issue is what was explicitly said, right? Remember, everyone in politics is a lawyer by trade or by spirit. The Iranians, they said, don't intervene directly in the conflict. Now, indirectly can mean a lot of things, but this I worry when I see these statements, if this is accurately translated, it may be saying, right, that telling Iran, hey, you can do a level of indirect intervention. Now, obviously, the U.S. knows it, too, is indirectly intervening in the conflict through its military material support to the Israeli military, training efforts, possibly intelligence, but also just through, irregular aid, trade, diplomatic relations. All of those things could be seen as intervening in the conflict. So you can't indirectly intervene in a conflict because in the modern global economy, everyone is indirectly tied to everyone else. But this may be interpreted by Iran as permission that they can intervene in indirect ways to a greater degree. So anyway, that is almost all I had. But if you're interested in seeing my analysis of some of the combat footage, not the gratuitous stuff, but we do analysis of the tactics, the techniques, that difference that each side is using in this conflict. A new video is dropping today on my site, Combat Vet News. It's my own site. I can't get canceled off of it. So if you're interested in supporting what I do, my independent analysis, you can support me with any one of these tiers. Any tier is going to get you access to the members only section. We've been covering the Ukraine conflict, but we're also more and more covering tactics but used in both sides in this Israel-Hamas conflict. That's all I had for you guys. Check us out at combatvetnews.com. The new video literally is dropping in like an hour. So I'll see you guys in a bit. Thanks again for everything. Be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel. Cheers.